Good evening, everybody. So today's masterclass is about cybersecurity, and the topic is about zero trust architecture. And the expert for today's masterclass is Mr. Dhaval Khernet. Quick introduction about himself: he's a security enthusiast. He has experience in multiple domains, including networking, security, and compliance. He's also certified with ISO certification 27001 and 2014, CPSI and AWS Cloud Practitioner as well. He's been into the security arena for quite some time, and this is our first program with Mr. Dhaval Khernet. So without any further delay, request everybody of you to give a warm welcome to our expert in the evening. Also, festive wishes to everybody. Happy Diwali to you guys, and stay blessed in this festive season. And without any further delay, Dhaval, you can get the class started. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kaushik, for the quick introduction. Very good evening, all of you. Good morning and good afternoon if somebody joins from the different time zones. So let me share the screen. So Kaushik, can you confirm you're able to see?
Your screen is visible.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so let's not get into this introduction one more time. I will not reiterate this, don't worry. So let's get into this today's presentation, which is about an overview of the Zero Trust architecture. So today's subjectives are the introduction, what is the Zero Trust security is for, what is the background behind it, what it holds, and then we will have the poll in between. And we'll start introducing and get into a deep dive with the Zero Trust security model. And what are the key takeaways from this presentation is the last thing we will discuss. So these are all the, whatever the presentation holds, it is totally and subjectives to me. It does not relate to my previous, current, and any future organization. So you can take it as a disclaimer from my side. So these are the topics which I have selected for my own research purpose, but I want to present it to the larger audience so that everybody knows about how the Zero Trust works and how we can get acquainted with, and you can start your Zero Trust environment in your organization, how you can implement it at your end. So this is the topic that we will cover in today's presentation. So
Dhaval, the volume sounds a bit on the lower side. Is there any possibility we could increase the volume? The audio is a bit low. The volume.
Yeah, sure. Let me try one more time. Hello.
Yeah.
Is that okay for now?
Yeah, it's better.
Is it better, right? Okay. Confirmation. Okay, so this is the topic of today's with the Zero Trust security, and there are many topics available in the market, which states about the Zero Trust model or Zero Trust architecture. There are different concepts behind it, how you can implement it, but I have selected some of the topics inside this presentation to make you aware about how Zero Trust actually works about, and you can implement from the start, how you can kick off at your organization, and how it will help you in betterment of the security and the compliance strategies and goals, because security and compliance is not the different, or it is not the same thing that you can consider, but it is the two sides of the coin, and you should be secure and the compliant at the same time. It's not the either or game. So it also satisfies, here we will discuss that how you can adopt the Zero Trust model by satisfying the security and compliance need. Okay, so let's get into it. So let's try to understand what is the zero trust model and what does it mean by. So zero trust model is conceptualized formally by the John Kinderberg, who is the VP of the Forrester Research Organization, and he realized that a traditional security model operates on the outdated assumption that everything inside or even the outside of the organization can be trusted. And this is not the case. It should not be provide the access depending upon the request. Even if someone requests, you cannot just provide the access. Even we can take the example of the auditor. If somebody asks you to provide the access as part of the evidence collection, so you need not to provide the access even to the auditor, even to the higher management at your organization, just he requested for. So that's how the zero trust works. It should not be trusted at any level. So otherwise the auditor may give you the, the non-conformity by giving the access to the unintended resources. And the security team is, the responsible for the control implementation in very broader manner, and the compliance team who is responsible to verify those implemented controls. So both teams should, work in parallel in line with the business objective to achieve the goal of the zero trust concept. So if you take the example of the password policy, the PCI security guideline states that the password strength should be the 7-character length in length. But if we consider the more secure password policy, we implement the 8-length password in our organization. So it should be in line with the compliance and with the security. It should not be the 10th or the 19th or 20th character length, because it's not friendly for the user to enter the password and the credential all the time, because it's a very lengthy process and it's not user friendly. So this is how the policy and the compliance should work in line to satisfy the goal. And the expectation and the perspective are the very big area to be discussed. So from the zero trust security model, what is your expectation and the perspective? Like your expectation to be secure and to be compliant, you want to go with the SOC 2 compliance, PCI compliance, and whatnot, and all other, the security guidelines available in the market. But what is your area, or what is your business objective to become the zero trust architecture implementation? So if you are in the industry of the credit card service, so you must go through the PCI compliance point of view. But if you are in the EU region or the South Asian region, they are more familiar with the ISO standards. But some of the regions are more familiar with the SOC 2 type 2, SOC 1 type 2, or the SOC 3 audit-related security guidelines. So depending upon the region, depending upon your business objectives, what you want to achieve through the zero trust, that you need to define in the first hand, so that you will be able to achieve your business objective. So it should not be like the everything as standard is available and we need to implement it. It should not work in that way. So recently, the CISS benchmark has released the version 8 control. So at the starting point, if you want to start with the zero trust, you can at least implement the CIS benchmark security guideline, which help you to kick off the security best practices at your organization. And there are the 3 levels of the implementation guideline and the implementation group over the CIS benchmark, which you can start with the IG group 1, and then gradually you can improve your security processes, your security posture, and depending upon your experience and the expectation, you can go on with the other controls which are listed in the IG2 and the IG3. Similarly, there is a risk assessment formats available. There are plenty of formats which you can adopt and implement the risk assessment criteria to your organization. So similarly, you can go with the CIS benchmark, which has recently updated the version 2.0, which states the same way, like the IG1, IG2, and IG3 are right now in the pipeline and yet not out in the market, but you can at least start with one of them so that you can ensure the minimal security at your organization. So these are the different expectation and the perspective. So even if you consider the some security best practices, like what you want to achieve through it, like if you want to buy the layer 2 or the layer 3 switches, which one you go for, depending upon your need, you have to go through that. So if you want to buy the secure layer 3 switches, you will get the two benefits of the secure layer 2 approach as well as the layer 3 functionality of from the switches. But if you just want to connect the LAN ports to that switches, so you just need to buy the layer 2 switches. So depending upon your budget, depending upon your business objective, you need to budget your security devices and the security implementation tools specific to your organization, not just go with the trends and whatever the available in the market. You have to budget your security tools very respectively, very sincerely, so that you will achieve the return on investment very effectively. So the background of the zero trust is specifically is do not trust. It's simply in the straightforward manner, we can say that you should not trust anybody. Even, we may have the we may perform the background checks to our resources, and we can say that, oh, it's not available or it's not applicable to our organization, but we never know that, right? We should not trust our resources or blindfold. We can trust them. And but it's a contradiction, but we need to adopt this kind of thought process, and it should be implemented in our infrastructure so that we can assure the security as well as the compliance. So the compliance, being compliant is not just sufficient. Like by implementing the InfoSec policy or the acceptable use policy, we will be compliant, but you should be in line with the actual implementation, whether you have implemented whatever you have said in those policies or not. So the both sides should be ensured. And the trust must be developed based on the authentication, authorization, and the continuous monitoring. What does it mean by? So authentication is what, who is someone? So it basically defines in the three ways: what you know, what you have, and what you are. Okay, so authentication works in that way. So what you know is the credential, your login ID and password is what you know. This is the first layer of defense, and the second layer of defense is the what you are or what you have, which is the second factor of authentication, which is biometric or the iris scan, which is nowadays everything is available to the smarter devices. And in terms of what you have, you can have the second factor of authentication in terms of OTP or the tokens that you have configured in your authorization application. And in the authorization, in terms of it works in that way, the RBAC policies or the ABAC policies you have implemented at your end. This is the second layer of defense, at your organization. This could be. So authorization means to what level of the extent you have access, or the somebody have access to what resources. So when you logged into the application, you are authenticated. After the authentication, what resource you should be able to accessible to, depending upon your roles, your responsibility, and your work format. So depending upon that, you can implement the RBAC policy, DAC or MAC. So DAC or MAC is completely a different concepts. And so MAC is basically a mandatory access control, which is very stringent and very straightforward. You cannot automate in this kind of approach or the access approval form. But in the contradiction, the DAC, which is the discretionary access control, which provides you better visibility and better automation in terms of the access approval process. So in the DAC, the data owner or the who is processing that particular data has discretion, or they have access and authorization to provide access to whom and what based on the role. So MAC is moreover the need to know basis, wherever the different concepts in the RBAC you can implement at your organization, which is the role-based access control. You need to first define the role for a particular task or the resources that is accessible up to. So depending upon the role decided by the top management, you can define that what role has access to what extent the resources. It may be the end user, or it may be the the API request. In terms of whatever the request it comes from, we cannot serve it directly, but it should go through this kind of layer of protection through the authentication, authorization. Even if we are talking about the API, it should have the valid token to get access to the resources it's intended for and it has assigned to. So these are the some layer of the protection you can try out as part of the access management. And so it leads to the another concept of the insider and the outsider threat. So threats, you cannot assume that it should only comes from the outside, but it may come from the inside as well, because the recent studies states that so during the pandemic time, or maybe the before that, the insider threats increased up to the 47%, and it is not the anonymous data, it has the proven data from the reputed organization. The Verizon 2021 data breach investigation report suggests that the responsible for around 22% security incidents are from the insiders only. So there are other statistics as well, which states that 68% organization feels and confirms that the insider attacks are more, more than the outside attacks. So we need to consider this concept as well, that we need not to trust the blindfold with our internal resources, and it should be depending upon our defined criteria. We should provide the access, and we should define before providing any access to any request. 50% of the organization believes that detecting the insider attacks has become significantly to the somewhat harder since migrating to the cloud. So this cloud infrastructure also comes into the picture and provides the bigger attack surfaces to the inside and the outside attacker as well. So these are some of the points that you need to consider while you are giving the access to the inside, even the outside, because outside is the more, the probable or the intended thing that we can consider, that the attack may come from the outside, but we are neglecting or overlook the insider attack and we just give the access to our resources, and we do not perform the access reviews on a periodic basis, which comes under the continuous monitoring, which is a very vital role in terms of maintaining the zero trust security. So we need to consider the insider threats as well, whether it is intended or not intended. We can never know. So whenever we assign any roles, it should come through the approval procedure. It should be tracked in a very particular manner. The process should be defined for the approval process as well, how it should come from the immediate manager should approve that process, whether it is required or not, whether it is needed to perform the job or not. So in terms of the access review continuous monitoring, we also need to make sure that whatever the access we have given to the particular user or the particular request, it should revoke after a certain time of period. And even if we are not revoking the access, we should ensure that whatever the access is given, is it still in act or not, whether he still requires it or not, whether his job role has changed by the time, and it doesn't require the access to whatever the previously requested for, and we can revoke the access. So it is the part of the continuous monitoring, and it is every organization should have the monitoring tool to detect and perform the access reviews depending upon their environment, like the cloud infra or the on-prem solution, or if they are using the hybrid approach for their internal infrastructure. So, and it will also lead us to another concept of the shift left concept of the security. So we need to first implement so it is in terms of the SDLC cycle we are talking about. So it should be first implemented at the right time, and gradually, whenever we are improving or we are maturing in terms of process, we should shift it to the left, so that we can ensure that each and every SDLC cycle must be reviewed periodically manner in the security is integrated to each and every steps of the SDLC cycle to ensure the security and secure code analysis or the VAPT or the UAT environment. So these are the concepts and threats that we need to consider whenever we are considering the inside or the outside attack surfaces. So this zero trust doesn't mean that we can eliminate the risk. We never can eliminate the risk, because otherwise there will be no 0 day present outside the world. So we can always minimize the risk, or we can minimize the attack surfaces, but we cannot eliminate the risk, or we cannot eliminate the securities, the threat surfaces throughout our organization. But we can improvise, and we can always mature our security processes time by time, so that we can ensure that we are in line with the current security threats and the vulnerabilities present in the market. So, and zero trust will help you to achieve these kind of goals. So nowadays, organizations are spending millions of the dollars and the rupees to enhance their security and to enhance their infrastructure. But it should be very sincerely budgeted whenever we are considering purchasing the security tool, or we are considering the onboarding the vendor over our infrastructure. Whenever there is we are providing access to our data to the vendor, so we need not to spend that much, but we need to be particularly manage those through our budgeting tool. We should foresee what are the other aspects that we need to consider while budgeting for the security tools. So as I said earlier as well, if you are required only the the LAN ports for your systems, then you need to go through a layer 2 security devices like the switches. But if you want to leverage the functionality of the switching with the layer 3 along with the layer 2, so you need to go through the layer 3 switches and add on to that, whether you if you want it in your stackable manner or unstackable switches. So likewise you can consider and foresee what you will be required in the near future, whether the user's strength will be increased or it will be stable or not. So likewise you can consider other aspects as well whenever you are considering any security vendors or the purchasing security tools for your environment. So need not to purchase each and everything whatever available in the market, but it should be strictly depending upon your business case. Yeah. Okay, so next is the poll time. I will ask
Yeah, sure.
Kaushik to take it over, I guess. Yeah.
If there's a question right in front of you, feel free to leave your answers for that. Awesome. Rest of the guys, I have 8 responses so far. Awesome. All right, last 30 seconds for people who haven't answered. All right, last 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, guys, for participated. And I think we can see over 81% of people have voted for some users should have access privileges beyond what they require. Right, I think with zero trust, as Dhaval is explaining, that we should assume that nobody should be given the access and they should be with zero and only give role-based access, which is one of the methodologies. Thank you so much, Dhaval. You can continue.
Thank you so much, Kaushik. Kaushik, do you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So guys, just a quick introduction. So we are also running a cybersecurity program, the Tank Walk. So we do a 16 weeks course wherein we do 12 weeks of core topics and we do 4 weeks of soft skills, CV prep and mentoring sessions. All our classes run over the weekend. We have 10 plus renowned experts from various domains like KPMG, Deloitte, EY, and other TCS and other companies as well. All our classes are live classes. We don't do pre-recorded sessions. And all of the topics are followed with a project and an assessment, which is graded by these experts. So some of the topics that is covered in this session is introduction to network security, then cyber attacks, web application security, incident management. We also do digital forensics, GRC, identity and access, cloud security, and SIM. So these are the topics that are covered over the span of 16 weeks. The promotional discount. So if you pay 59,999, it's a fixed fee, and if you don't, if you complete the course and don't get a job according to respective terms and conditions, the money will be refunded. But if you are ready to only pay half of the money, and once you get placed, the rest of the remainder goes off. I've already shared a link into the chat window. So head to our website using that link. You will have a full-fledged brochure that you can have a look at, explaining all our courses. So I am kind of sharing the link with you guys again. So we're running a promotional discount right now. We're already ramping up 5 batches. This is the 6th batch, which is going to start off about next month. So I would kind of definitely encourage you guys to go ahead, visit this link, register, get a call, talk to an academic counselor, and they'll be able to guide you through what our course would entail. Also remember that we also offer placement assistance as well. So definitely feel free to register this link. It's a promotional discount using Dhaval's URL. So you'll be able to get a discount on the program course fees as well. Thank you so much. Dhaval?
Thank you. Okay, so our previous slide unfolds the different concepts that we just discussed, that you know that nowadays the security teams are spending more than what is intended. So security is not what you buy, but what you implement. It means that you need to take care of the due diligence and the due care both at the same time. Neither, you know, the either or will work for you. Due care is what you buy, and due care is what you implement and actually in practice. So that's how it works. The zero trust is you should not just buy the things which are available in the market. You have to also ramp up the traditional security processes at your organization and start looking at it in a different manner and with the different concepts and the different approaches to adopt the zero trust security, because it should be built upon the business cases. And I must say the zero trust is not the one with the static model and the architecture, but it provides a very dynamic in nature. So you can adopt and mature it and improve it by the time, and whatever your business case suggests for, whatever your team approach suggests for. So due care and is also the essential, but the due diligence is also the important. For suppose if you have the Wi-Fi backup, so we can use a UPS, but we cannot purchase the diesel generator, right? For the small home setup. But if you're considering the organization, you must have as part of the disaster recovery or the make it available to the users. So in terms of the availability and in terms of the use cases, you need to consider what you buy and what you implement at your organization. And if you want, have the data and the development over the cloud, then you can consider that, you need not to have the backup as the cloud infrastructure or the cloud provider will take care of that. But it is not the case because cloud infra also part of the shared responsibility. It is not just the cloud provider's responsibility to manage the availability, confidentiality, or the integrity and the security of the data, but it's the client's or your organization's responsibility as well in the same manner. So okay. So if you consider the nowadays approach for the vulnerability assessment, we have the thought process of we need to consider the OWASP top 10 or the NIST framework or the CIS benchmark for the security hardening. but we need to think beyond that, the OWASP top 10 or whatever the frameworks available, because we need to consider some business cases whenever we are testing the application, or even if we are building the application. So we need to consider some security best practices for the code review process and the code building as the application building process, so that we can ensure that we are not just bound to the OWASP or any other framework, but we are adopting other security concepts as well, and we are, not strict or limited to this kind of concepts, but we can consider the business cases depending upon the application functionality, and we can find out some more bugs beyond this kind of normal practices that whenever we are considering for the VAPT. So in terms of the compliance as well, we have the SOC, PCI, and ISO. In the PCI and ISO, you have very strict controls, so you cannot change it for your sake of convenience. Or but the SOC, if you can look into that controls, it provides confidentiality, process integrity, availability, security, and privacy. So this kind of controls you can implement at your organization if you are considering and want to go for the SOC certifications. So why it is more flexible, because it provides you to choose the controls, whatever you want, depending upon your business case or the use case in the industry you are in, like the supply chain or the credit card or the merchant or the service provider. So things like that, you can consider some of the basic controls from the auditor, but by the time or in the next iteration, you can consider more controls which are applied to your organization, and you want to make them included as part of the audit process. So this kind of traditional security assessment, you can improve in terms of the compliance as well, and you can go beyond and above what is traditional security approaches or the concepts. So I have listed down some of the 7 major approaches that you can consider while implementing the zero trust at your organization. So first point is the compliance, to standard and controls. So I must say, in my opinion, you should at least go for one of the controls, one of the certifications in your organization, whether it should be ISO, PCI, HIPAA, NIST, CIS. At least start with one of those controls. As I said earlier, the CIS benchmark has provided the recent version control number 8, which you can implement in your organization in the stepwise, because it's not the tomorrow's task, or you cannot get it completed by tomorrow, but it is the long whole process. But you should at least start with one of those, so that you can confirm where you are, what is your gap. It will help you to to do the gap analysis, the risk assessment, the BIA, BCP. All this comes together and will help you to be compliant with one of those certifications if you want to go through. So we need not to adhere to each and every standards, I must say, because if you are in the health industry, you should go through the HIPAA or ISO, but you should not go through the PCI, because you are not dealing with any credit card or the PII related data. So you need not to go through each and every standards and the procedures out there in the market, but you at least start with the basic, like the NIST framework has also rolled out, the guidelines depending upon the zero trust specifically. So you at least start with one of those frameworks, so that you can ensure and find out some gaps, whatever is present in your current security practices, and you can fill out those, and you can compensate those with the with the control implementation. As we discussed earlier, the periodic access review is one of the critical aspects that we need to consider. So we need to ensure that the organization is following the least privilege control to minimize the attack surface. Based on your use cases, you can consider the RBAC, DAC, or MAC, or the least privilege access and need to know basis. So something like that you can consider, and it is very vital role while considering the gap analysis. Why it is so much important? Because even if we are considering the case where we have the network switch upgradation process, right? We need to make sure that our firmware is up to date and it is not no more vulnerable to the attacks which are out there in the market, the CVE available to the market publicly. So if you want to upgrade those firmware, and if you are providing access to the person who is not aware about this kind of process, how we need to upgrade those switches, because otherwise we can make a chaos and we can make a mess out of it if the person is not familiar about that particular process or is not knowledgeable about that process. So we can mess the whole network, and nobody will be able to access to the internet or maybe the internal resources that users intended for. So we need to consider this kind of approaches for the periodic access review. And there is a third point, which is enabling the multi-factor authentication, which is you can consider as a second line of defense. You can take the consideration of the email or the text or the third-party authenticator app, security questions, or the along with the strong password, whatever you have said in your password policies. So this is what you have as we discussed earlier. So you can consider and implement the multi-factor authentication, even if you can consider the OTP as well. But whatever the available combinations you want to try with, you have to enable it throughout your maybe the identifier, just like the SSO or the G Suite or the Office clients or whatever the application you are using. But make sure that it should be enabled by default and it should not be overridden by the end user, so that we can ensure that it's not vulnerable. And at least this setup as an extra layer of security. And that's how we can get rid of the residual risk. So residual risk is the risk which is remained even if after applying the controls to the environment, to the controls that we want to get rid of. So this type of multi-factor authentication you can consider. Then the fourth one is that the alignment of the security and the compliance team's goal will be better protecting layer to the organization to build the trust internally, and helps us to encourage the business development strategies as well, because outside partner always asks us for the how the security team works, how our infrastructure is secured enough so that they can share the information to us in a very secure manner. This comes with the approach or the concept, as well as a right to audit, because sometimes the clients ask for the audit. So how you are up to, what the security best practices you are up to, and we need to take care of this kind of requests from the clients as well, even if we are consulting to the organizations, but they need to make sure that whether we are taking their information or the data seriously or not, whether it is leaving the soil where we have intended to be, to the data should be on, like in the cloud infrastructure, whether it is the DC is implemented, the DR is implemented or not, to make it available to the intended user. So these are the alignments of the security and compliance need to be considered. Then there is one more emerging security concept is right now is the SIEM tool, which is the Security Operations Center. Nowadays is very popular, and you can implement at your organization with a very minimal budget. You need not to purchase the SIEM tool available to the market, but the open source tools are also available. So you can try those features and get implemented. So what the SIEM tools suggest for the Security Operations Center, how you can build that. So it is useful for the log aggregation in terms of the audit. So whenever there is an incident or the disaster happens, you can at least have the 90 days of the log to make the go through it, to have the audit trail. And as per the PCI compliance, you should have the 90 days of the active logs, which you can directly go through that at the after the disaster happens or the incident happens. And you must have the 1 year of the audit logs in the archived manner or as a backup. So so this kind of approach will give you the more visibility to the internal and the potential external threats. What are the anomalies that are in your infrastructure? They will notify you then and there. Whether it is, you can define the roles and responsibility and the how it should be visible and how it should be alerted to you. This is depending upon your tools, how you can integrate to other like the Slack app or the email notification or the text or the call. There are a lot more integration available in terms of the SIEM integration. So you can consider the open source as well as the paid one, depending upon your budget and depending upon your use case. You can try to implement. That's how you can have the consolidated view of your log, which are there in the different applications or the different infrastructure. So that you need not to go through each and every application and look for any security vulnerabilities or the security anomalies in your infrastructure, but rather you have a single dashboard where you can look all this, and it will help you in terms of the continuous monitoring and continuous assessment as well. So this is the good point. And in terms of the endpoint security, this is the major concern in terms of the security, because the malicious activities can take advantage of the things like, the guessable password of the systems, of the local system, lack of the antivirus, DLP solution, maybe you can consider the VLAN is not, segregated or not configured in a secured manner. The VPN solution itself is not available or not serving the purpose as intended for the critical resources that can turn into the data leakage. So what in terms of the DLP solution or the VLAN we can consider? So if suppose you want to try to catch the sensitive information being transferred over the unsecured layer or even outside the organization, so DLP solution will take care of that. But suppose there is a case that from the internet, somebody wants to try to download some sensitive file, or maybe it is unintended and the malicious file is being downloaded to your organization. So antivirus or the endpoint solution will take care of that. But what about the clipboard access? Whether DLP supports this kind of access, whether you can copy paste the data, whether the endpoint solution will detect the download functionality, but whether it is detecting the clipboard copy and paste functionality as well. So this type of use case you need to consider while you are onboarding any vendor to your organization. Similarly, with the VLAN, you can consider the case where you should not configure the trunk port other than the intended port, because otherwise the attack or the internal threat may have access to the different VLANs, which is not intended, which is not, it should not be in that way. The trunk port should be configured only for the between the switches or between the routers to get access to the different VLANs. It should not be the default VLAN. So these are the things that you can consider while considering this endpoint security. Even if you are onboarding any VPN solution, so you are whitelisting those VPN solution IPs to the critical resources so that you can ensure that these resources are only accessible through the VPN tools whenever you are connected to, otherwise you will not be able to access those. So whether the VPN tool itself is available, whether it has the basic DS setup whenever there is a primary failure in their environment, whether he is capable to provide a 999 or 59 availability procedure. So these are the security aspects. In terms of the security, you need to consider while you are onboarding, and this comes to this and leads to this the last point, whether the vendor security management, whether we have performed the security risk assessment whenever we are onboarding it. We have to take it very seriously, because to ensure the data is being handled responsibly, and even the vendor is complying with some of the security best practices at their end. So it is not just the case while the onboarding, but you need to make it the annual task as well, because you never know that if you want to onboard you onboarded any vendor, and by the time you want to leverage some other functionalities of that particular vendor as well. So the use case may be different, what is intended before the change of the use case. So you need to track that, the changes and the use case and the data we are dealing and transferring to the vendors. So the security risk assessment should be performed at least annually to ensure that we are in line with the vendor security risk assessment or the third-party risk assessment, and we can ensure that yes, the vendor is also complying with some of the standards. And suppose sometimes the certification that possessed by the vendor, it may expire by the year, whether he is continually applying to that particular certifications or not, whether he has changed any scope or not. So these are the things that you can consider while doing the due diligence with the vendors, whether the right to audit clause is being added to the agreement or not. This is also the main and the considerable thing when you are performing due diligence with your partners or the vendors. So these are the main 7 points that we have just discussed, but beyond that, there are some other points that we can consider, like the risk assessment or the gap analysis or the BIA. So these are all interrelated to each other, because whenever you perform the gap analysis, it will help you to improve the BIA, which is the business impact analysis, how the resources and the infrastructure in your organization will be impacted whenever there is a disaster. So you need to go through this kind of process, the gap analysis and the risk assessment, which helps you to perform the business impact analysis. And the outcome of the BIA will help you to perform the BCP, business continuity plan. So whenever there is a business outage, you have to invoke the business BCP processes to ensure the availability of the application or the resources which you have. So this type of approaches will, not only this 7 approach, but we have the funnel it down to this 7 approach, but above and beyond this 7, there is a lot more thing that you can consider in terms of the zero trust, implementation at your organization. So, and there are a lot of things available for the risk assessment part as well. As I said earlier, the CIS has recently released the 2.0 version for the risk assessment framework or the model. So you can consider and go through that process, implement those particular controls, whether it is applicable to your organization or not. So depending upon the applicability, you can implement those controls and get to know what are the gaps available and present in your organization, and you can come over that and you can remove or eliminate or minimize the attack surfaces as much as you want. Okay, so the last topic is the key takeaways. So this is what is this presentation is intended for, and it should be like, what are the key takeaways that you can consider? So if you are starting with the access review, as we have discussed so much in detail in the previous slides, it is the lengthy task. It is not the one-day task to be, or the it is not the the short-term project, but it is the long-term project maybe that can take up to the annual project. But you at least start with something so that you can come to know what is the gap, and you can perform. It may require some more time to perform that. You can have the follow-up, ticket creation, whatever the tool you're using for the tracking purpose, the process implementation, the completion of the timeline, the budget for that. So at least you can start doing that by doing at least the minimal thing. What are the security best practices available? So build the trust amongst the business partners by doing the zero trust, because that's how you ensure the security at your organization, and it will help you to the security audit readiness as well, because you are already implementing some of the controls from this well-known frameworks like NIST and the CIS benchmark. So depending upon your business perspective and your use case, you need to encourage and embrace, uplift your in terms of the security at your organization. So this is the case you can consider while implementing the zero trust security. So NSA, the National Security Agency, also has prepared some guidelines. We can, go through it and adhere to the zero trust model. NIST also has the 800-207, and the CIS benchmark has the 18 controls for the zero trust architecture implementation. So this kind of stuff you can at least start with, which will help you to achieve the zero trust at your organization. Is there any? So this is it from my side. Is there anything you want to discuss?
So
any questions?
Yeah. We can have 1 or 2 questions. So for the recording bit of it, it will be available in the portal in the next 2 to 3 days. The certificates will also be emailed to you. But if you guys have any questions in relevance to today's topic that's being covered today, we have another 2 minutes we can take. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Dhaval, thank you so much for coming on the Antbox platform to have shared your knowledge around zero trust. Though the topic is kind of a bit more on the experienced professional side, but I think the content that was covered off was very much relatable. We hope to have more collaborations in the future around this, but thank you so much on behalf of Antbox for having come and shared your knowledge on this community in terms of the masterclass community. So, and we hope to host you with more events in the future.
Thank you, Kaushik and Walk to providing the opportunity to present my thoughts for the Zero Trust. Thank you for that. Appreciate.
Absolutely. Dhaval, wish you happy Diwali. Guys, rest of you guys, wish you a very happy
Thank
Diwali.
you.
Enjoy the festival. Take care of yourself, and thank you so much for attending today's talk.